Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to an episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to tell you guys about some cool topics. I think it's cool because I like weird, history, artifact type things, and I think yours is cool because ghosts.
Because ghosts. I am very excited to be doing this episode. For those of you who are listening to the normal podcast version, this won't seem any different to you in any way, shape, or form. However, we are recording this topic episode live for the first time ever. We do our story times live all the time, so we have plenty of practice with that. But we've had people say, hey, dogs, why don't you do a topic episode? And that's mainly because we do them at 4 a.m., and we do our research between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., and that's why. But we put a goal up on our live streams for the Storytime/Pasta Time episodes and said, hey, if you hit this goal, we'll do a live topic episode. And everyone hit it in 2 shows, and we're like, well, fuck, now we got to do it. So here we are on a beautiful Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. with natural lighting in the office.
Yeah, it's weird having, like, natural light in here instead of the fan light that's just bright and yellow and...
Yeah, and speaking on a very specific mindset of the person who edits the audio, it's going to be weird to edit a topic episode with car noise in the background, even though we sometimes get them at 4 a.m. out here. But
it's just not as prevalent as it is right now, so... I
just want to say shout out to everyone who watches the episodes live. You all are amazing, and thank you for the donations, and this episode is definitely a reward. Also, shout out to all our wonderful patrons over there at patreon.com/Scaryish podcast. Because our topics were picked by them. So Robin put up a poll and said, hey, of these 9 different options, which ones would you like to hear? And the top 2 were a mysterious location, I think.
Yeah, a mysterious location and haunting/ghost.
Yeah, haunting/ghost. So Robin took the mysterious location and I said, I'll take the other one. And I'm pretty excited to see how this turned out. I'm really happy with my topic. I'm going to be covering quarantine hauntings, so something very topical.
Whoa, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Robin, What are you going to be covering this week?
I'm going to be covering the mysterious ancient relics of Brazil.
Nice.
It's specific ones. It's not generalized. It's a very specific instance. So
right on. All right.
So thanks to our patrons who helped us choose our topics this week. The episode is the first time we've ever had a deadline. So when we were doing the topics...
We have a soft deadline normally of Tuesday morning at 4 a.m.
Right. And so we kind of take our time and we procrastinate. We are the biggest procrastinators.
I will say in our defense, when we procrastinate, it's typically because we're doing a bunch of other shit. You're doing school
I usually have
or
school
work
stuff.
Or marketing shit for the show. And in my case, I'm doing work or research, or development, or laziness. Valheim really got to me there for a little while, too. So there's just...
Adam would, after work, he's like, I want to put in 2 hours of Valheim, and then I can start researching.
Exactly. Plus, we usually don't even start researching till super late. So knowing we had to do it at, a reasonable fucking time was really stressful.
Last night, it was really stressful. It's the first time, I feel like, on this show that we've been like, oh, God, we need to stay up so late to try and get this research done.
But it's Saturday. It's
but we stayed up till
4:30
researching and getting that stuff done. Worth it. Hopefully you guys like the episode.
I was lucky enough to get through my topic first so I could play around with some of the settings for the live show, and I was like, okay, that actually worked out really well. So, and it's always nice, when we record Tuesdays, when we finish recording at 3:50 and I have 10 minutes to edit the episode, and then it goes up and we don't get to bed until 5. I have to work at 8, so you only get 3 hours of sleep, but that sucks. But for this, it was just it's 4:30, we're going to bed. It's the stream's
at 1, so it was fine. All right, but thank you for helping us pick our topics, because that kind of took that load off our shoulders. Because normally we're I
hate loads on my shoulders.
Ew.
I know, right? It's the worst. So thank you to the patrons for getting that load off my shoulders.
Okay. So my half of the choices was a mysterious site, a mysterious place, not necessarily a site, but what I'm covering is the mysterious ancient relics of Brazil. And so obviously we have to head over to Brazil, right? We're going to go to Brazil, specifically Guanabara Bay. I've never been to Brazil. I've never been to South America. So
nor have I.
Really? You've never
we
been?
have some wonderful listeners from Brazil, though, so shout out to all of you.
Yeah, shout out to
Brazil. We appreciate
Brazil.
every single one of you.
someone from Norway just became a patron. I was like, from Norway? It's so far. Okay. Anyway,
Horrible.
So Guanabara Bay is in the southeast coast of Rio de Janeiro. So it's like the coast, and then you go in 15 miles and it's Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
Apparently it's the second largest bay in Brazil. It's 159 square miles, so that sounds huge.
That is a huge bay.
I feel like it's something where you can't see the other edge. If you were like looking across, you wouldn't be able to see the other
You
end.
could probably see the coastline from the middle. I don't know what the distance is for like actually seeing the shore. But I think you're right. Like from
Lake
the shore,
Michigan?
Lake Michigan's fucking huge.
Okay.
It's enormous. It also looks kind of like a dick. It's like if someone lifted Florida out of the land and like the water rushed in. That's what Lake Michigan's always looked like to me. So if you think Florida looks like a dick, Lake Michigan also kind of looks like a dick.
All right. Good to know. So, the fact that this is the second largest bay in Brazil, pretty cool. Its name also seems to have the possible translation of the bosom of sea, which is hot. Downside is that it's also absolutely full of pollution. So apparently, just different types of pollutants and runoff and things like that kind of pour into the bay. And there's no...
That sucks.
Yeah, rules against it or something. I don't know. But it's filled with pollution. Within the bay, under 100 feet of water, covering the span of about 3 tennis courts, is a curious set of relics, artifacts.
They
objects.
seem huge if they're covering that much space.
Well, like, it's like splattered all over that area. What makes this so strange, or these items so strange, is that they really don't have any particular reason to be there. It's like one of those out of place artifacts.
Right, like why are these
here? they come from Rome, which is an ocean away. And it's a mystery because no one's really been able to make sense of how it got there because they are so old. In 1976, there were some lobster divers doing what divers do when they came across this interesting thing. There were some very old, lovely, barnacle-encrusted jars at the bottom of the ocean, and a diver named Jose Roberto Teixeira one day brought up a few of these jars.
Teixeira, I think is how you say it.
Teixeira?
I just know that because of Mark Teixeira, who played
is he a baseball player?
Major League Baseball for a long time, yeah.
How did I know? I don't know, it's just a guess. Adam just knows sports. I just assume.
Yay, sports.
Okay, so Jose Roberto Teixeira one day brought up a few of these jars, and he actually tried to sell these jars to tourists.
If I found treasure, I would not be selling it to tourists.
He successfully sold them. So he brought up like 8 of them, and by the time he was caught by authorities and stopped because they were like, these are like stolen artifacts.
These belong in a museum.
So do you. Anyway, he only had 2 left. So he still had 2 jars by the time authorities stopped him. They told him, like, you need to go take this to the University of Brazil and have people look at them because they look like artifacts that should not be taken from here.
Right.
And they were tall and tapered, made of ceramic, made with 2 handles, which is a design typically used by ancient Greeks, Romans, and Phoenicians. These were containers that would have been used to carry things like wine, oil, water, and even grain during long sea voyages.
Okay.
So,
like storage units, like, almost.
Well, they're jars. I mean, you're gonna put shit in jars. I mean, you know what I mean?
The first thing I thought was like grease. Like you put like, a
Lightning.
bunch of different types. I hate you so much. Put a bunch of different types of grease in jars. Sometimes you put like
Grease.
jam or jelly in jars.
I don't think, did Rome
Like
have
bacon
jam
grease,
and jelly?
Fish grease. You never heard of that? Like separating your greases. So when you cook. All right, never mind. Just keep going.
Okay. So I'm sure you're
Grew
saying
up differently. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm sure you're saying, like, sea voyages, well, it's in an ocean, so that totally makes sense, right? The thing that confuses people is the fact that the first known European, I guess, visitors to Brazil is thought to be around 1500.
So, much later than the Roman era, right?
Right. So a Portuguese navigator named Pedro Alvarez Cabral arrived in Brazil in the 1500s, and this is important because the jars, according to experts, are from the 2nd or 3rd centuries and are of Roman origin. So
this was like way, way out of the way to
yes,
get these things there.
It was like completely different era. So it's just a mind-blowing discovery. In 1982, an archaeologist and treasure hunter named Robert Marks decided to get his hands on more of these objects from the ocean. And he sounds like he wants to be Indiana Jones, but, whatever. He had actually participated in over 5,000 dives over his career. He is considered one of the pioneers of underwater technology. So this guy's somebody, He's not just like a random schmo who's like, I want to do this. He actually is into discovering things under the ocean. I don't know. Well, he, along with a doctor named Harold Edgerton from Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
MIT.
Also known as MIT. You know what's funny is I have a friend who goes to MIT, and anytime anyone asks her what school she goes to, she says, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The first time she told me that, I'm like, you mean MIT? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God.
Trying to be humble there. That's pretty nice of them. Massachusetts Institute Tech. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think she always says like MI Tech or something. I'm like, what?
That's funny.
Anyway, so these two were able to get permission from the Brazilian government to go and dive and kind of lead an expedition to comb the bottom of that bay. And they used sonar technology, and with that technology, they found 200 of these jars down there.
Holy shit.
So that's a lot of jars.
Someone placed a really big order to Rome from Brazil back in
I mean, if you're going transatlantic, it's not just, it's like the Ever Given.
It's kind of not, but okay.
Because you're not going to take just you're not going to take one container. You're taking...
Well, obviously, but I didn't think it would be that many. And that many lost at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
The bottom of the bay.
Thinking that the original jars were a hoax, they were just like, we got to figure out if this is real or not. And this large discovery of so many changed everything. Because they're like, obviously, there's no way. 200 jars. This can't be a hoax.
Or it's a really good hoax. In the polluted, murky water, these things were just hiding there, and they were sitting there for thousands of years. Well, I don't know, thousands? 2nd century. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Almost 2,000 years.
Yeah, almost 2,000 years. And some were easily found closer to the surface, and then some were buried deeper down into the ocean floor, or seafloor. And some were just covered in barnacles, and, it was sitting there for a really long time.
Some were living in a pineapple under the sea.
Yeah, some were living in a pineapple under the sea. I love that show. Some even had coral that had grown over them because it's been there so long. And luckily, there were a good number of intact jars left, despite the amount of time that they had spent under the sea. From the condition of their discovery, the team believes that it isn't possible for these items to have been planted there in modern day. Because if they're covered in barnacles, they're covered in coral.
They've been weathered by time.
Right. According to some of Marx's speculations, these jars came from an ancient Roman ship, and that the existence of these jars is a sign that there is also an ancient shipwreck down there somewhere.
Shit. Yeah, good point.
This is strange in that the Romans were only known to have voyaged as far as India. So they only got as far as India. How the heck?
So this is like a historical mystery.
Right.
I feel like my topic's going to suck now.
Why?
Because yours is so
But I like ghosts! Yours is going to be good. It's okay. We decided last night, I was like, ghosts should go second because everyone loves a good ghost story. Anyway, supposedly, traveling a distance as far as Brazil during that time would have been almost, if not completely, impossible. But some do say their ships had the technology, so they could have.
Well, it's like maybe they were lost at sea and just like praying they would find land. And they just keep sailing, and then finally it's like, oh my god, I see Brazil, but they don't know it's called that. And then there's shipwrecks. They're like, shit!
So this incredible feat is something that Marx definitely wanted to understand and figure out. He wanted to further investigate the area and see if they could find other types of artifacts. He claims, quote, if authentic, it would be one of the most important discoveries in the field of marine archaeology.
Absolutely.
End quote. One of the experts that confirmed the age and era of these jars was Elizabeth Will, who was a professor of classics and a specialist in ancient Roman amphoras, which are these jars.
Gotcha.
And she's from the University of Massachusetts of Amherst, not
Lots
MIT.
Of folks from Massachusetts on this.
That's what I said. I was like,
is there some connection between Massachusetts and Brazil?
I think maybe that's where Robert Marx is from, and so he just took stuff back to talk to them. Maybe?
Right on.
According to Will, quote, the highly publicized amphoras Robert Marx found in the ship are in fact similar in shape to jars produced in kilns at Kos, on the west coast of Morocco. The Rio jars look to be late versions of those jars, perhaps datable to the 3rd century AD. I have a large piece of one of those Rio jars, but no labs I've consulted have any clay similar in composition. So the edges.
Is that a quote? Or do you
this
actually
is a
have
quote.
one?
This is a quote. Fuck you!
You didn't say quotes. I thought you were saying you have one.
I did say quote.
I'm so excited if she has one. That's all I'm saying.
So the edges of the earth for Rome, beyond India and Scotland, and Eastern Europe remain shrouded in mystery, end quote. Apparently, these jars underwent this thermoluminescence test. I've never heard of that before, but it was performed at the University of London, which determined them to be even older than 2nd and 3rd AD.
Wow.
It was more around 19 BC, which is much older. So Marx's theory is that this Roman ship did, in fact, make it all the way to Brazil, and not because of some lucky or unlucky wind that blew it all the way over there randomly. It was purposefully navigated there, managing to skip over the rocks or reefs along the way. So he thinks that it was completely manned and a purposeful trip to this continent or country. So his goal was to find out how they would have done that. Apparently, before he could investigate any further, the so far cooperative Brazilian government changed their tune. They denied Marx the permission needed to further explore the area. They even banned him from the country, supposedly.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty darn extreme. According to the government, Marx had stolen numerous historical objects from shipwrecks all over the country. Which
this sounds like the plot twist of an Indiana Jones movie.
This, of course, led Marx to being all, it's a government conspiracy. They're just covering it up. The theory being that they wanted to prevent anything that would change the established history of Brazil.
Huh.
Something that makes me think that he's just a drama queen is that he even accused the Brazilian Navy of burying the jars and any evidence of a possible shipwreck under more silt to keep them hidden. This, of course, was denied by them, because why not? Why wouldn't you deny that you did something to cover something up? You know what I mean? The Brazilian government actually banned any and all underwater exploration in 1984.
Wow.
Spanning the entire 4,600-mile coastline.
That's fucking nuts.
When Marx had returned to continue his search, they had covered everything in tons of silt and sand.
Why?
Which does lead me to believe the cover-up theory. I don't know.
Aliens
So
have to be involved in this.
So
somehow.
the government denies that they did that, but then they go
and
back
do that.
and it's covered.
Yeah.
You know, it actually is covered.
Banning that large of a coastline from having any sort of exploration done is fucking crazy.
It's so sketch. This whole incident, this whole thing was reported in the New York Times on June 25th, 1985, nearly a year after.
I had just been born.
Oh my god.
Yeah, baby Adam.
Your little...
I was somewhere shitting my pants when they were reporting on this.
Roman relic baby.
Roman relic baby, that's funny.
This whole story, including Robert Marx, was told. In this article, it stated that Marx had actually found the front of a wrecked ship. The sonar they were using, that tech, had actually seen it, though it was like a shattered, front end of a ship, like It had been wrecked by a big rock. How you could tell that through radar, I'll never know. I don't know what that looks like. But maybe this ship was the one that he was looking for this whole time. But wasn't ever actually able to excavate the site before the government was like, no.
It's just so odd they would ban any exploration and be like, nope, no, we're done here. Like, we're completely done. Like, out of nowhere.
Because of the lack of research and exploration, it's still not exactly known how these ancient Roman jars got there. Like, was it actually blown across the Atlantic? Is it a huge cover-up? If this discovery were found, it would really change the history of that country. It would mean that ancient Romans had reached the shores over 1700 years ago. Cabral, the Portuguese explorer who was given credit of discovering Brazil, is a beloved figure in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
He's revered as a saint and a national hero.
Ooh, yeah,
so,
now it's starting to make a little bit more sense.
Supposedly the discovery that the country could have possibly be founded by someone other than a Catholic nobleman, someone of that kind of background, it brought out a lot of hate from the church.
Right.
The church was like, dude, no. The mere suggestion of being so was like borderline heresy. The suggestion that it may have been a different country entirely that discovered Brazil caused a lot of turmoil at the time too. So Italy started claiming ownership of the country, sort of, kind of. The Italian ambassador was like, y'all Italian immigrants should get instant citizenship.
Yeah, okay, now things are just escalating.
Which
this
caused,
is unreasonable.
So there were, at the time, there were a lot of, like, public demonstrations of people demanding citizenship. And I could see why Brazil would want to prevent any change to this established history.
Right.
According to Marx, regarding working with the Navy, quote, the Navy people I worked with told me the Navy had covered up the site to keep it from being plundered. But they also said that this thing is causing so much controversy, it's better if you leave, end quote.
Wow.
So do you think it's a hoax or that they're actually ancient? You know, some say it could have been jars just floating themselves over to the Americas.
No.
Academically, it's insisted that the Romans did not have, that never made a transatlantic journey, so.
Well, they wouldn't even know to call it the transatlantic journey,
yeah.
You know? It's like, to them, it's just they went in one direction and they wound up somewhere that it seems like they knew what they were doing and why they were going there. I definitely don't think this is a hoax. For me, this one personally
is a cover-up? You think it's an actual
cover-up? I think
cover-up?
straight up something happened where once they started investigating it more and more and they realized that it could change the political landscape of their country and the history of their country, they're like, nope, we're fucking done. Shut it down. Because if you shut down the entire coast of Brazil, that's fucking crazy. And then when you get accused of covering shit up, you're like, we didn't do that. Also, good idea. And then you go and use that exact method to literally cover shit up. And then you're just like, yeah, fuck you. What are you going to do now? That's just super sus.
I just think it's.
I'm voting them out if we're playing on this. Brazil is getting, all of them. Brazil, the Romans, Italy, you're all getting shot out in space. This one's too weird.
I think it's nuts that there were so many people that were like, dude, no, I should get immediate citizenship because, that person didn't even discover the country. This is completely different. Like, it's all me. I deserve this. Da da da. It would cause so many freaking problems. So many problems. I wonder if they had let it go, there would be like war, you know?
Yeah. They could have been trying to stop something even worse from happening.
Right. And I wonder how many things in the world that stuff happens
that
to.
It applies to.
Yes. It makes me really freaked out. But yeah, that's the mysterious, ancient Roman artifacts, relics, whatever have you, from Brazil.
Very interesting. Good shit, Robin.
I did not
the bar really high.
I did not expect it to lead into like a conspiracy theory topic thing, but like it went from mysterious place, mysterious artifacts to fucking conspiracy theory. It has it all. Baby.
There you go. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you, patrons, for suggesting the topic that led Robin to it. So, pretty good stuff. So before we move into our next story, we are going to take a really quick commercial break. And we're back. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into the second topic of this topic episode, which is mine. And this week, like I mentioned, our wonderful patrons picked out our topics for us. I took the topic of ghosts/hauntings this week, which really takes us back to our roots, which is always a nice thing to visit. Sometimes we veer a little bit off because it's exciting to do something new and interesting. But
what do you mean?
Like, I covered the Electron, I can't remember the name of that boat, but the boat mystery where the guy disappeared for a year and then tried to show back up and win the race. Then it turns out he went fucking crazy and wrote like a manifesto and then jumped off the boat. Some of those things aren't exactly like ghosts and hauntings, but when you have a show like Scaryish, which is a paranormal/true crime show, it's kind of nice to get back to like directly paranormal stuff. So solid topic for our first ever live topic episode. I'm pretty happy, so thank you, patrons. Something I was thinking about on Friday, actually, when I was talking with some of my coworkers, clicked with me when I was writing my script yesterday on Saturday, and it really did lead to this specific topic. So without further ado, I present to you, dear listener and viewer, Quarantine Hauntings. So at work on Friday, like I mentioned, we were talking about the struggles that people have had in all ways, shapes, and forms dealing with COVID-19 and quarantine and the lockdown. And one of the things I hadn't considered was folks that live in places that have creepy shit happen, what it's been like to be stuck at home. So for folks that have told us before, because we've been doing this for almost 4 years now.
Oh my God.
And they say things like, I have a ghost that I live with, or I have a house that's haunted, but I have to stay here. I haven't really considered, what's it been like to be stuck there all the time? Because I know if I lived someplace that was kind of creepy, I might not want to be home all the time. Plus, sometimes you just get in moods where you're stir crazy and you just want to go out and do stuff, and home is just for hanging out and going to sleep. So one of the thoughts that I've had while watching horror movies, especially when I was younger, was why don't they just leave? When the activity kicks up, just say, screw it, I'm going to a hotel and being done with it.
I mean, a lot of things that we've covered, it's that's not feasible.
It's not a possibility.
Right.
The house is haunted, just pick up and leave, #fuck it. I think that's the mindset of a younger person. And then I got older and I realized how much goes into uprooting your life and purchasing a home and finally getting moved in. And then the idea of hey, something smells like sulfur. Is that weird? Or I think I heard knocking on the walls last night. It becomes something that you can see yourself saying I'm sure there's a logical explanation for this. So the logical explanation is that moving fucking sucks and it's expensive as balls. And also, you really, really don't want this place that you just got moved into after all this you just went through to be haunted. How much will that suck if that's the case? So you're just going to try and stick it out. So the parents in horror movies have become a lot more relatable to me as a 35-year-old man. So
it's funny because I watch horror movies almost every single day. And Adam will be doing something in the office with me and just listening to me talk shit at these movies. Why? Just call the cops. Just call. What are you doing?
Why do people never fucking call the cops?
No one ever calls the cops. I'm
things go wrong in horror movies.
And I just feel the older you get, the more you're just this is stupid. Why would you make these decisions?
The adult decisions being made now don't bother me, but the stupid decisions bother me even more.
Right.
There's a way you could deal with this. Why aren't you dealing with it that way? So it's just, I understand more and more why people are just stuck. They don't feel like they can leave. And you have a kid saying I want to leave. It's where the fuck are you going to go? Do you have money? Do you have a fucking job?
Oh, and when we watched The Strain and that kid was just so stupid. The kid
in The Strain is the fucking stupidest character in that entire show, in many shows that I've watched in a long time. Yeah. He's no Carl. I haven't watched Walking Dead in a long time, but
I don't think Carl was that bad because
he was. That's why I said he's no Carl.
Yeah,
because Carl gets super fucking cool.
Yeah, and he learns how to survive, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas this fucking kid is useless in The Strain.
Oh man,
oh my god,
it's just it's such a okay. I'm not gonna say it's a terrible show, but I didn't enjoy it that much, mainly because that kid sucks.
But I like Kevin Durant.
Yeah, Kevin Durant is awesome. Anyways, all right, let's keep going.
JK,
I hate you so much. So, anyways. If things keep happening and you have to admit that there's strangeness to it, it's sometimes a mindset where you get into where you're maybe it's not that bad, or maybe I can live with this. And we have listeners / viewers who have written us who have said that that's the case. And those are the thoughts of the adult mind with a realistic bank account and responsibilities where you're I'm just going to put up with it. So what happens in the instance where you're living in one of these scenarios and you wind up stuck at home because of a pandemic breaking out, or a quarantine, or what if you haven't noticed anything yet? And then all of a sudden you're stuck at home because of these things, and now you're starting to notice stuff. That really hit me when I was going to try and find a topic specifically on hauntings. And when I started to think about that, I was all right, let's dive in here and see if this has happened to anyone. And sure enough, it turns out for some folks, these are the exact scenarios that they had been dealing with, and now they're faced with something very creepy during quarantine. So our quarantine experience is very similar in a lot of ways to other folks out there, and it's unique in its own ways, which I think everyone's going to have that story. Like, we also baked bread from scratch when quarantine kicked up just to make sure we could do it.
And oh man, was that fun. And I think I posted videos. There's videos on the Instagram.
Yeah.
Or pictures of our bread loaves. And it was just really fun to learn new skills. What else did we do that was a new skill, do you think? I know we baked different flavors of bread, too. We
wound up making a whole lot more stuff at home, and we started getting our food from different places, but that's fairly normal. One of the abnormal things that happened to us during our quarantine experience was I quit my job. I was like, yeah, well, you're not risking my health or my family, and also this job fucking sucks, so.
I remembered the day he was like, oh, by the way, I quit my job. I'm like.
I was like, we'll be fine. It's gonna work out. And lucky for me, it did. And I'm in a wonderful place now, and I'm in a wonderful place in my life, and it really, really did work out. Plus, we have much better health insurance right now. So that's something that's very specific to our quarantine experience. Like Robin particularly, she transitioned to stay-at-home university and had a temporary work stoppage, which was like the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah, I've never been furloughed or laid off or anything like that. Well, no, I've been laid off before. But I've never been furloughed, like, hey, you gotta leave, come back, in a couple months. It was just, that was a first for me. A lot of stuff changes in something like this where you're quarantined and having to stay at home.
And all that stuff was like the first 3 months of quarantine. And you might be thinking like, Adam, is this a monologue about your experience in quarantine? No, I'm specifically bringing up these examples because it's a lot of stuff to happen in a couple of months, That's a lot of stress and anxiety and negative energy generated from the fact that this crazy thing was happening and some other crazy things happened in our lives. And I think that happened to like everyone out there. There's not a single person that's been like completely unaffected by COVID-19. So when you hear stuff like that, you think, wow, that's a lot of crazy energy to be living with for like everybody. And you're not alone. And because you're not alone, it is not shocking that I was able to find so many folks that had very similar things happen and then all of a sudden had really creepy shit start to kick off.
When you think of ghosts too, when you're pent up in your house and you have nowhere to go and you start getting really upset and you start getting really lonely and depressed, I feel like those negative energies cause these things to grow.
It's the same thing you hear from horror movies. Yes. Like the horror trope of like this negative energy or emotion feeds whatever this entity or activity is. Yeah. So having all this shit kick off and everyone being stuck at home, it's not shocking that you find out that some people are starting to be affected by this in weirder ways than the rest of us. One of those folks is a man named Adrian Gomez. Adrian is 26 and is employed as an IT specialist. He lives in LA, and when the lockdown began, he too switched to working from home and baking bread. He also took on a home project, which I know some folks have done. We did not particularly decide to do. We reorganized and cleaned, but we didn't do like an overhaul. Adrian refinished his and his partner's porcelain kitchen sink.
Wow.
And also took up daily exercising, which is something a lot of us said we were going to do and did not do.
Yeah, right. I'm like, so, I should have done that on my birthday.
After spending some time adjusting to his new routine, though, Adrian noticed something new about his home. At night, the doorknob could be heard from across the apartment rattling.
No.
And he would get up and go check it.
No.
And there was no one inside the apartment rattling like they were going to get out, and he would look out the door, and there was no one outside either. The door was just rattling like something was trying to get in.
Oh, that's so scary.
Or out. So
that's so scary.
This happened. It was creepy to be sure.
Did he replace the doorknob?
He didn't replace the doorknob, but he thought, like, this is very odd. This has never happened before. There's no reason it should be rattling, but I'm sure there's a rational explanation for it. Not long after that, he woke up to the sound of his window shade moving. So we have blinds in our house. We have like curtains that go in front of them. Some people have those shades that just like pull down, you know, you have to tilt it and like lock it in place. You know what I'm talking about? Like the single shade sheet that you can like pull down and it'll like roll up like a tongue.
Okay. Yeah.
He has one of those. Okay. I've seen the picture of his apartment. I'm not creepy. He posted it. I've seen it there. So okay. He woke up and the shade wasn't just moving. It was, as I call it, rocking and rolling. It was moving so fucking much and slamming so much against the window that it woke him up, and he initially thought it must be another earthquake. And so, upon further observation, he noticed that the window shade directly next to it was sitting completely still, along with everything else in his room. Something was slamming the shade against the window.
Demons.
And Adrian stated that he took a quick head count of all the pets and realized there was nothing that could have been behind the shade. There wasn't like an animal that had gotten in that could be doing it. You could see the window as it's being lifted up and slammed back down into it. And it freaked him out. And this is a quote from Adrian, quote, I very seriously hid myself under the comforter like you see in horror movies because it really did freak me out. And I don't know why it's a universal thing from everyone, but a blanket made of cloth that barely keeps out your fan is clearly a shield from all the evils of the night. The night is dark and full of terrors, and people should have known in Game of Thrones to just carry blankets with them.
I don't know why. The blankets just make you feel safer.
It's because they make you feel warm, and you sleep under them, so it makes you feel safe.
No one ever says, like, I hid under my throw. You know
under my throw, yeah, it's always under the blankie. So then he and his partner started to hear footsteps coming from above them while they were sleeping. And that started happening repeatedly as well. The problem there is there isn't a unit above them. There's no one living above them.
So it's in the attic?
They're like,
or is there
what the hell is happening? I don't think there was an attic because it's an apartment. But I thought it was funny because the article I read, it said there was no one living above them. Get it?
I get it. It's a demon.
When asked about the activity that seemed to have been increasing since staying at home, Adrian said the following, quote, I'm a fairly rational person. I try to think, what are the reasonable, tangible things that could be causing this? But when I don't have any of those answers, I start to think, quote, maybe something else is going on. And that is a terrifying thought. And here's the thing about Adrian's place is that he and his partner had never noticed any activity before. But now that all these things are happening and all those energies are out there, just like we talked about, things are starting to happen in this place that was just completely quiet before.
Is it just because you're never home? You're never home to notice?
Well, the thing is, and I have stories for later, and I have a topic about that, or I have like some sentences about that, is that what if it is just that we're noticing things because we haven't been home at those times before? But these are times they would have been home. All the stuff is happening in the evening when they're sleeping or close to that time when they're just chilling out.
Maybe because you chill out more, you're like way more calm. You're way more just, relaxed. So any little thing is like, whoa, what was that? You're much more relaxed in your apartment and you're just chilling all day, every day, because you're stuck inside for quarantine.
You're saying the calm energy is what's causing this thing to kick off? I don't think that's
No,
the case.
It's not the calm energy. It's the fact that you notice everything now that you're not like...
Oh, you're just more present.
Yes, you're not like, boom, 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 boom. I gotta get all this stuff done.
You're not distracted.
Yes.
Okay, maybe that could be. I mean, you're basically there to notice activity you didn't notice before.
Right.
So that could be it too. One of the things that movies have always taught us beyond the shadow of a doubt is what we were talking about earlier, that stress, fear, anger, all the negative emotions that Yoda talks about being associated with the dark side tend to exacerbate paranormal activity. So maybe stress, fear, and anger towards the worldwide pandemic or a terrible disease, the fear of dying, or a lockdown could have caused whatever traces of the paranormal that may have existed in this person's apartment to suddenly get a boost in power, like Iron Man when he got shocked by Thor in the first Avengers, or Goku in Dragon Ball in literally every fight ever because he gets angry and all of a sudden becomes stronger, which I'm sure all of you get both of those references. So the next story...
there's like a very small group of people that are like...
cool points. So the next story is from Carrie Dunlap and his girlfriend Alexandra Cole.
Are these like posted on Twitter or something? Or
no, they've actually been interviewed by like the New York Times and sci-fi.com and like 3 other organizations. So the New York Times actually posted an article where they talked about all these things kicking off and had all these interviews.
Okay.
And then all these other news organizations picked up their article, repeated some of the stories, and then interviewed new people themselves. So that said, this is from Carrie Dunlap. He lives in a 1-bedroom in Queens with his girlfriend. Their landlords or the previous tenants of the apartment they live in, and they let them know when they were moving in that they had spotted the ghost of an older Asian woman in the apartment before. So basically, you're moving into a place like, just so you know, the apartment's haunted. Carrie claims that when pandemic kicked off, he saw her while heading into the bathroom in the middle of the night. He states that she was wearing green scrubs and was glowing. So he approached her until she was only arm's length away from him, and he was saying she was there like she was a real person. He reached out and turned on the light to the bathroom, and she completely disappeared when the light came on. Another night, Carrie woke up to the feeling of the blanket being adjusted and spread out evenly at the bottom of the bed by his feet. He was confused because he and his girlfriend, like so many other people, typically fought over the blanket throughout the night, and he thought she had gotten up and redistributed the blanket evenly. He waited for her to climb back into bed, but he never felt her lay down, so he called out to her, and she didn't answer him. He thought that was very weird, so he opened his eyes, started looking around, and she wasn't there.
What?
And at that moment, he saw her step back into the room and realized she had been in the bathroom the whole time. and that the blanket being smoothed out and evened out on the bed had been done by some unseen force, or somehow wind kicked up and perfectly laid this blanket out on the bed.
Okay, so she went to the restroom, but she didn't fix the blanket.
She didn't fix the blanket at all.
Wow.
So they freaked out about it, and they settled on the idea that the activity that they had just experienced really seemed like the ghost was trying to make them both more comfortable.
Aww.
So seeing her in
Scrubs, it's kind of like
made
a
them
nurse.
think she was like a caretaker.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So one of the cases of increased activity I came across is a woman named Candace with a K. Candace with a K is a school teacher.
Sounds hot.
Who did not give her last name to the publications. I hate you so much. Did not give her last name to the publications because she wanted to be kept anonymous, because she was afraid that she would lose her job if anyone realized it was her. Because she said the school district that she teaches in is very conservative and they wouldn't like to hear anything about paranormal activity. She stated this: pre-quarantine, I'd see or hear maybe 5 or 6 different entities a week. She stated that she was, quote, sensitive to paranormal activity and entities. So as a side note, that's a lot for a single week, but her norm is 5 to 6 ghosts that she interacts with a week. Like, that sounds terrible.
I don't want to interact with any ghosts at all during the week. So
she went on to say that during the worst of the quarantine, that number was up to 10 to 12 a week. So almost doubling in activity. And not only that, but their messaging and or motivation that she could interpret had changed. And this is what she said on that quote: the majority of activity during quarantine I've experienced is due to human emotion being at an all-time high and that stress leaching out to every area it can reach. It's just like Ghostbusters 2. That ooze would be fucking everywhere.
This generation, I feel like, is the most anxiety-ridden generation. I don't know, like...
I can't speak for other generations, but it certainly seems that way.
Yes, because so many of us are just, like, high-strung, you know? Big energy. Just like... I know I freak out all the time, and I sit there, and there's nothing you can do to fix things, but you're, like, worrying, and you're just full of anxiety, and you're panicking, and there's nothing you can do about the situation.
I try and not do that. So, just because I've seen it destroy people in my life.
I have so many people in my life that are on anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, whatever they need, you know, to make them feel like they're normal, you know, and
whatever normal is,
whatever their normal
the normal
is.
Version of themselves.
Right. And so I just think that I can totally see why during a pandemic like this, it's like ghosts are shooting up through the roof.
Everything's kicking off.
Because it's just so anxious, so emotionally high-strung.
So horny for normalcy.
Yes.
I don't know what that's actually called, but I think it sounds right.
Got a boner for, I don't know. I'm trying to fit into your dialogue. I can't.
All right. So Candace went on to say, during the worst of it, I would get messages of concern or warning from these souls, generally looking out messages, warning of what's to come, warnings not to let my guard down. So not only did the activity increase, it's basically like these ghosts are showing up like the 3 ghosts of Christmas during like Ebenezer Scrooge's Horrible Night, where it's like, yeah, things have been really fucked up your whole life. Also, things are going to get way worse. Or just like, don't let your guard down. Things could get way worse. Either way, it's not really... One, I don't want to hear anything from a ghost. And 2, that's not the message I want to hear from a ghost. I want the fucking lottery numbers, okay?
Well, we need to check our lottery numbers.
We do.
Damn it.
I don't want prophecies of doom. The Canadian Broadcasting Company actually had an article come out about this as well, where they interviewed a bunch of paranormal researchers. Thanks for the phone call, Canadian Broadcasting Company. Assholes. One stated that spikes in activity like this happen during times of anxiety, stress, and especially tragedy. This was also spoken of by the New York Times. Notable times in the past where I was alive, where there has been quote-unquote spikes from the paranormal researchers stating that there was like all these reports that are starting to flood in, were like the turn of the century and the turn of the millennia in 1999, when people were really scared about Y2K. Directly after 9/11 saw a spike as well. An article I found referenced the spike that occurred after the Vietnam War, that spike was actually really huge.
Really?
Because it was such a traumatic experience for the country and especially for the troops.
All right.
The article actually went in depth talking about how it was the rise of the popularity of celebrity paranormal investigators. They mentioned a few, and the 2 in particular that got really famous during this time were Ed and Lorraine Warren. They had been doing it since before then, but that was when people really started to pay attention to them because of how many cases were being reported. So it really makes you wonder, like, is this something that's actually happening, or if it's attached to our emotions, is it all in our heads? And it's important to remember that there are experiments that have been run in the past that have been recorded in which researchers attempt to literally create a ghost from a fictional backstory. So essentially they created a backstory and said, we're all going to sit around and pretend like this is real and go through the traditional means used to contact quote-unquote real ghosts and see what happens. And the results of those studies are really fucking creepy. Some of the same stuff you hear about seances having terrifying results of like things shaking, knocks being heard, disembodied voices coming from nowhere, happen about things that are basically made up. It's almost like their collective consciousness is working together towards this one goal, are willing this really creepy shit to happen.
Okay.
One in particular is called the Philip experiment. It's very detailed, and that's a topic for a different episode. But that one will send chills up your spine or down your spine or whatever direction you want chills to go on your spine. But I will cover that one in the near future. So is it preferable that we're causing these things to happen from our own emotions, or that it's ghosts? It's really hard to say. For me, it's ghosts, because that means there's an afterlife. You know, afterlife confirmed.
I feel like if it was from our emotions, means I'm just like real fucked up. You know what I mean? If it's my emotions causing something like that to happen, I'm like, I need to chill out.
For me, it's like, if I were to see a ghost, I would absolutely be terrified, but then immediately after that, I'd also be like, oh, yeah! Like, afterlife! Sweet! And I think that would actually relieve a lot of the stress. So, I think most of the things that humans fear is dying, and, like, whether or not there's anything after death, you know?
But, okay, so do you want to become a ghost after you die?
I just like to know that there's an afterlife. I'm not saying I want to be a ghost, but being a ghost would confirm there is one. So,
I would be afraid of becoming a ghost. I want to get all my stuff done. No unresolved issues.
Well, is that what causes a ghost? That's all we think causes a ghost.
That's what Casper taught me.
There's all these different theories about what could cause a ghost. But again, I would just be excited that the afterlife was confirmed. So moving on, one of the things I thought about when I was writing my script is how different things are for everything during the pandemic. Like you, obviously we covered the things that are different, but like people joke around about how different things are for pets now. Like, your pets just want you to leave. Like, they can't do any of the things that they do normally when you're at work. Like, they just want time to lick their balls and sit on the couch. Or their buttholes. It just
I was
going
to say, none of our pets have...
So, one thing I used to say pre-pandemic was that I felt like I spent the majority of my waking hours at the workplace. And I feel like a lot of people do feel that way as well. Because if you really think about it, you say, like, well, I work 8 to 5. Or I work 9 to 5. Or whatever that may be. But I would, like, wake up and get dressed, get ready, get showered, starting at 7 a.m. I would be at work by 8, hopefully, depending on my commute. I would work there until 5, or if I was late, it was like 8:02, I'd have to work until 5:02 or whatever. Leave work, come home, drive for at least an hour, be home by 6 if I was lucky. So realistically, I'm not in the house from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is 11 hours, man. You know, 11 hours, Monday through Friday, of my waking time has been spent not at home. And if I decided to come home at 6 p.m. and stay up till 2 a.m., meaning I'm only going to get 5 hours of sleep, that means I would spend 8 hours awake at home. You know, at best. Maybe I have to go run errands and I'm not home. So there's all this time you're just not there. And that sucks. And it feels absolutely crazy that that is the normal thing that we do. We trade all those hours for dollars so we can do the things that we want to do here and there. But
that's why I'm all about experiences.
Yeah.
Like, I don't work to just save money and then just live miserable, you know, and then you die and you never spent it.
And it's crazy to me because suddenly, like, when the pandemic hit and work from home kicked up, it's like everything changed. Like, suddenly life was work from home. It was just life from home. You know, like, you're always at home. Like, they closed everything down, especially during the beginning of the pandemic. And it's just like, please stay at home. Don't get sick. Don't get anyone else sick. Places are closed. You can't even go out if you want to. And it was really a be careful what you wish for moment. I sincerely think some kid out there had some project and he was like, God, I don't want to go to school. Please do something to keep me from going to school. And God's like, all right, like, the only thing I got left in my arsenal is pandemic. So there you go, Johnny. Like, you fucked over the world.
I'm going to say the only reason why I've been able to almost graduate, and actually hopefully graduate this year is because of pandemic and pandemic grading and online classes. So kid out there who had that project who was like,
wow,
I need this. Thank you.
So it's benefited Robin is what she's saying.
Yeah.
So at least there's some good in all the chaos that's happened out there. But for folks who are having this happen, is it just them scaring themselves because they're at home more and they're also scared? Or maybe just having all of your energy and emotions at home is the catalyst like we talked about. Or maybe that's why ghost stories and tales of haunted houses are, in most cases, like, here, like, listen to this tale from, like, the 1800s, the early 1900s. Like, we've seen that meme where it's like, how come ghosts are always older? How come they're not, like, from 2006 saying, like, I'm Britney, bitch? It's like, maybe it's because all of your energy and all of your time was spent in this house, and because of that, you, like, left an imprint. Or because of the time that you spent there and all the emotions you went through, you pulled something out of the ether that normally wouldn't have been pulled out in, like, today's age because you just don't spend enough time in your house, you know? And now that we're spending more time at home, and it's very similar to how we used to be, it's starting to kick all that shit off. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that this isn't just an American thing. I'm not just talking about something from the States or from California or from, like, Nevada. Like, I mentioned the CBC earlier, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, so it's obviously happening in other countries. And it's not just us. It's also happening in Europe. Here's a story about a woman named Madison Hill who lives in Florence, Italy. If we're still thinking about places with heightened amounts of stress, Italy is certainly one of the most negatively affected countries.
Because they had to shut down again.
It was a nightmare. I mean, they had to shut down to start. They were the first country to shut down. They've had to shut down again. I mean, it's been very difficult. So Madison is 24 years old, and she's originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. And she likes long walks on the beach. That last one is fake. I made that one up. Maybe, though. I don't know.
What's your perfect date?
So, what is it? April 26th?
Yeah, something like that.
Because you only need a light jacket. Anyways, she had activity in her home prior to quarantine that was typically focused in her bathroom. The activity included the sense of being watched and the door slamming on its own and towels winding up on the floor, which is very creepy. However, Madison does live with her boyfriend, so it could explain some of those things because, you know, these are things that another person in your house could be doing, especially the towel thing. But if just no one's there and you're hearing these things, it's definitely terrifying. And it got creepy for Madison a few weeks into quarantine when she found a camera lens sitting on her nightstand. And she was like, what is this? She asked her boyfriend, did you put this there? He said, I don't know what that is. She had lost that camera lens when she moved from the United States to Italy and was never able to find it. Her hobby actually used to be film. She lost this very important piece of equipment. She had no idea where it had gone, and then it suddenly just pops up on her nightstand when all this activity is starting to increase during quarantine.
And a camera lens isn't small.
I mean, no, it's like about that big. Like, I'm making about the size of a baseball. Everyone's seen a camera lens, and if you're doing it with like a professional camera,
well,
it's not just the cap.
It's like this long.
Yeah, it's not just the cap, you know, for your camera.
Yeah.
It's like an actual lens that's changing everything. So it's really, really creepy that this suddenly starts to appear. And then other objects in her home started to appear in other places, in particular, her keys. Now, I'd be really pissed if something was moving my keys. That definitely, again, seems like your spouse messing with you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the spouse is like, hey, it wasn't me. And I will say, the next time I do anything that I don't want to admit to, I could probably blame a ghost. I'm not saying
I would not believe it.
That's what this guy did.
I'm not believing it.
But they just started to find random objects all around the house. Some of the stuff that they had lost that they hadn't been able to find in a long time, or some things that they just didn't know where it came from. And they were both saying like, hey, this isn't me doing this. And it's really creepy. It reminds me of a story of my 7th grade English teacher who moved to the area to teach for us. And she bought a house that someone had previously died in. It was an older lady who used to leave Post-it notes all over the place because she was starting to forget things. And her husband used that as a joke, and he started putting Post-it notes everywhere.
I would murder.
Months after they had moved in, and it was scaring her more and more until he finally admitted, like, hey, that was me. So that's happening over there in Italy. And the last one I'm going to talk about today, the last one I'll leave you with, is the story of a woman named Janie Cowan and her husband, Will, who had previously been living with a ghost that they had come to accept. They named their ghost Matthew. They thought it was a good biblical name.
Why? I just want to know why people name their ghosts.
What's funny is I have right here, side note, I understand the desire to name something, but if you name it the wrong thing, it's just going to make it worse. Like, what if it has a name and you're giving it a different name? It's going to take offense to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, give it a nickname, like Dragon or Nighthawk. Something fucking
That's still
cool.
a name. They don't know that it's a nickname.
No one's born with the name Dragon or Nighthawk on their birth certificate. What I'm just saying is if you have a ghost, don't give it a name because it probably already has a name. Give it a nickname.
If you name I feel like you shouldn't be naming it and giving it a name at all. Like the ghost from the Sally house, they gave this ghost or demon, they don't know what it is, the name Sally. And it's just this thing that's still there, still does stuff, still terrifying. I just think that people shouldn't interact with it by giving it names and things like that.
You're making it too familiar by giving it a name.
Yes.
All right. My point was that if you're giving it a name and it's wrong, you're going to agitate it. So I see what you're also saying. So Matthew the ghost was mostly active at night prior to the pandemic. Janie and Will could hear the sound of footsteps running up and down the staircase at night, which I will say is a weird amount of acceptance because that seems absolutely terrifying. These people must have incredible patience, or they just can't move to be like, whatever, I guess we're going to have to learn to live with this. They stated that up front, the noises were not coming from pets. They weren't the house settling. This was absolutely the sound of disembodied feet running on their stairs. And it got worse and more frequent during the pandemic. Janie is a home health nurse. So when the pandemic hit, she actually started working more and she started picking up more night shifts.
So home health nurses, you go to their house and you take care of them.
Correct.
Okay.
So to keep from waking up Janie, Will decided that he was going to start using the guest bathroom to get ready, which is thoughtful and considerate and romantic.
100.
Basically, Janie's going to come home very exhausted, and he didn't want to use the bathroom that she would have to listen to him getting ready, so he starts using the guest bathroom. This didn't seem thoughtful or considerate or romantic to Matthew the ghost. The couple states that Matthew likes Janie better and does not like Will as much. You would think he would be okay with this, but Will ran into some new activity in the guest bathroom while he would be getting ready. So while showering, Will was suddenly hit with cold water. And I fucking hate it when that happens. And when I first read that, I immediately thought it's the plumbing. Maybe
I know, it could just be the plumbing.
Flushed the toilet, or turned on the sink, or the dishwasher kicked on, or the laundry started, or something like that.
Or it's just a hiccup in the water heater.
Will said none of these things were running, but not only was it weird that he was getting hit with cold water, which had never happened in that bathroom before, but when he reached out while he was in the shower to check, he was finding that the hot water nozzle was completely turned off. So while he's in the shower, and he apparently this was happening when his eyes were closed, I'm guessing during the shampoo portion of the shower, when you can't open your eyes, so you don't want to get your eyes all hurt.
When I was younger, someone did this stupid meme or something like that, where it's like the reason why you don't open your eyes when you do that is because there's a ghost standing there.
No, it's because you don't want your eyes to burn from shampoo. But he was reaching out, and he was realizing something had turned the hot water off in the shower. So he was like, that is really creepy. And if that wasn't creepy enough, this happened to him three separate times.
Okay, I want to be like, oh my god, ghost. But what if it is just a problem in the heating, or not the heating, but in the plumbing that made it
Why would the faucet turn off?
I don't know.
That's not something that happens when plumbing's bad. And you have to imagine that you would notice your body rubbing against the handle, even if you were doing it yourself when your eyes were closed. Like if you bumped into it and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the water's cold. You would notice yourself rubbing against it. Most handles need some force to close once the water's running because you're shutting it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is this a real haunting? Are all these real hauntings? Are all these people just really on edge? And what I can tell you from personal experience is being on edge will make you think something is up, because I work from home now. Like I mentioned, I'm at home almost all the time. And I was at home the other day, and this is the thing, is that for my mom, who works from home and lives with us, she hasn't had to go through much different routines when it comes to her work, because she's always worked from home. And so when this kicked off, things were a little bit different from her, but not so much. But when I was working from home, I was like, okay, well, I don't have the office experience anymore, but if I need to walk to the water cooler and get some conversation, my mom's downstairs in her office, and
is that
I can
your
just
water cooler?
Cruise on by. The office water cooler is the kitchen, where I can grab some snackies, which is always awesome.
Free snackies, too.
No kitchen I've ever been in an office had really good deviled eggs before, but we have those here. But there was a day at home where my mom was like, hey, I'm going to go out. And during the pandemic, my mom is high risk, and she is not wanting to get, COVID-19. I don't think anyone else is there. She's had complications in her past before, and she's like, I don't want to experience any of this ever again. I'm terrified of it. So we've been very diligent and very careful. So when my mom was like, I'm going to go out, I was like, wow, this is the first time in a long time Robin won't be home and my mom won't be home, and I'll have the house to myself. And I was like, it's been a while and I don't even remember how to behave, but I'm supposed to be working, so I'm just going to go back to work. My mom left, and as I was sitting here at the desk, I started hearing noises coming from the attic.
And I was like, nope.
What the fuck is that? It sounds like there's an animal in our attic. So I got up and I walked into the bathroom to use the restroom, and I could hear it more and more like it was over the top of me. And I really got the feeling like I was not just being watched, but that I was being followed. And it was super fucking creepy. So I went out and I stood in the hallway, and I just stood there and listened. and it sounded like creaking coming from above me repeatedly. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now?
I feel like I remember this happening.
I sent text messages like, hey, just FYI, like, I think there might be something in the attic. I'm hearing some weird noises. I wanted it to be on the record in case I was murdered, because my head wasn't really ghost. It was someone's living in our attic and they're going to come down and murder me now that I'm finally alone. So I, of course, grabbed a weapon just in case, because it's fucking 3 p.m. in the afternoon and I heard some creaking, so why not grab a weapon? And I'm like, man, I am on edge. Like, I am definitely been put on edge by everything that's happening. And I'm like getting freaked out just from being alone, which before would have been like, oh my God, free time to myself. I'm so happy. And I just sat here and I was working and I was like listening and I could definitely hear it. And the thing that sucks is that when my mom got home first, I was like, I'm going to tell her about it and we're going to listen to it and figure out what it is. It completely fucking stopped. It 100% stopped. I'm like, well, fuck me. I don't know what that is. This is like a month ago. And I still haven't gotten the ladder to go into the attic because, one, it's heavy and I'm lazy, and two, because I really don't want to go up there. So I understand where everyone's coming from when it comes to heightened stress and having these creepy fucking things happen. I will say that has not happened to me again since. But again, I haven't been alone in the house since. You know what I mean? So who knows, man? It's really hard to tell, but I really empathize with all these people that are going through these things and having these weird happenings going on in their homes, because it's supposed to be where you go to for sanctuary and to sleep and to feel safe, and then suddenly it turns against you. And I think that's the creepiest thing about a horror movie, or watching something like that. It's like, where are you going to go? And then all of a sudden, like, your presence being there too much is what's kicking this off and causing this to happen. So it's really interesting to think about. Some of these stories were really fantastic going through. I will say before I wrap up my topic, it is very clear the number of hauntings have definitely shot up in this past year, and it's hard to tell what's happening. But if you have had something that you've gone through that you've experienced that you just haven't told anyone, because I certainly considered not saying anything about the noises I heard in the attic, but I was like, just in case I'm murdered and it's a true crime story, I definitely want to bring it up. If you have gone through something where you're like, I just didn't tell anyone, and you do want to share it, please reach out to us. Email storytime@scaryish.com. I do want to hear about your quarantine hauntings, especially if you need someone to talk to about it. And tell us what's going on and let us know if you want it read on the show and if you don't, because I understand either way, because we're definitely very interested to hear about it. But yeah. I was really shocked to see, just from Googling, how many stories were out there of people saying that things have been haunted. I found a bunch of stuff on Reddit, but as with Reddit, some of these things are not trustworthy.
Like fictional?
Fictional. They definitely seem fictional, where it's like, okay, cool. Like, I didn't realize that you are possessed right now while you're posting this, you know? I don't think
Depends on the Reddit you're reading
the demon's
it from.
first order of business would be to get on Reddit and admit to its own existence, even though it worked so hard to possess you. I think it would go and try and world dominate, or whatever the fuck a demon was trying to do that's possessed a person. But there's been some crazy shit that's out there, and I just want to let everyone know, like, you're not alone. And I totally get what's happening right now. I totally get where you're coming from. So feel free to reach out to us if that's the case. But I definitely wanted to go through some of these crazy quarantine hauntings. So I hope you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. Ghosts are scary. I don't know. I think hauntings and stuff like that freak me out. Some of my favorite movies, horror movies, are the ones about ghosts and hauntings and things like that. So
I think the creepiest thing for me is always when something small happens where you're like, you know in your heart, you know in your mind, in your logical mind, like, that couldn't have just happened. But it's small enough where you're like, well, you know, what does it matter? You know what I mean? Like, I read this story, and I didn't include it, of a woman who was making masks. And her house had always had a really odd feeling to it, but it had gotten worse and worse during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And she was making masks to cope. And she had enough stuff laid out for, like, a certain amount of masks. She got to the last one, and it was like, she had her things in front of her, and she picked one thing up. And then she turned around because she heard a noise, and she looked back, and everything that was on her desk was gone. And she has not been able to find it. It's gone. And she was alone, and she was terrified. And I was like, that's super fucking creepy. Like,
that's terrifying.
But it was like, she rationalized it by, I must have moved it. I must have lost it. And then, like, she sat down and she wrote it out, and she put it on this message board. And it wasn't Reddit. I don't remember what it was. But she was just like, no, I'm looking back, and it's like, I know exactly what I had. I had all my materials. I started making it. It was directly in front of me. And in a matter of seconds, it vanished. And I don't know where it went. And it's really starting to bother me the more I admit to myself, this is not possible. So
that's really scary.
Yeah, these things are fucking
That's like
creepy.
Something out of a horror movie, legit.
And they're kicking off more and more. And the more I realized when I was reading these stories, that's what these things were. You know, the small things that are creepier.
All the small things.
It sincerely feels like those are all the beginning of a horror movie. Like the inciting incidents where the audience knows something's up.
So we just got to keep up with these people.
But the character doesn't admit to themselves
murdered.
yet. Exactly. But I don't know if these people are going to be interviewed again going down the road. So there's just no way to tell. So if you have something happening, I want to know about it so we can document it, so we can make sure your story is told if you disappear. And I wanted to tell you mine just in case that happens to me too. So there you go.
Well, I hope you don't disappear.
Me too. Unless it's like I went to Mexico to live on a beach or something like that. So, but thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. And that is the end of my topic. I don't know why Robin's waving her hand in my camera right now, but the fun stuff of a live episode. All right. So I think that's just about everything we have. If you have a story you would like to send us, like I mentioned, we would love to hear it. Please email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. Or hit us up on any of our social medias. You can go to facebook.com/Scaryish podcast. You can also watch the live shows there now, which is pretty cool. You can go to, I was going to say YouTube, but you can go to YouTube if you want and message us there. I don't know how that works. YouTube.com/Scaryish. Twitter is @ScarishPod. Instagram is @ScarishPodcast. If you have a fictional story that you would like to send us, or you would like to suggest an SCP or a creepypasta for us to read, please email pastatime@Scaryish.com. We would love to get that feedback. We've had a few originals sent our way. We've had a lot of SCP suggestions, which I sincerely appreciate. So keep those coming. We love you all. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free. Can't go wrong with ad-free. And there's, the more you go up, there's different things that you get with different tiers. There's a physical merch tier, which is so cool. And we're really thankful for all of you folks. And if you're not into the monthly donation thing, you can go to ko-fi.com/Scaryish podcast. And those are one-time donations. All your donations go to upgrading our studio setup, changing things around. We changed things around this week. And it's thanks to everybody who's donated and supported us. So, yeah.
All right. So I think that's just about everything we have for this episode of Scaryish. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.